Right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this session of the International Youth Alliance for Peace in discussing gender-based violence. So today's arena would be in media representation, an area of immense nuance and of deep relevance into gender-based violence, especially when victims go about interacting with the stakeholder throughout their cases. I'm Ravit Tilagedra, and I'm thrilled to be moderating today's session and taking this very pivotal journey with you all in discussing gender based violence with our topic, media representation and its role in shaping attitudes towards violence against women. Before moving on, I'd also like to give you a quick introduction into the International Youth Alliance for Peace cause. At the IYAP, we're a youth focused, volunteer driven organization that brings together young people from all over the world to discuss very pertinent topics to peace in general. Each year, we launch a dialogue series, whether it's webinars or panel discussions, to create a platform where experts like our very distinguished guests and our live audience and our audience present today and myself in discussing topics of very great interest to peace. To date, we've had over 300 discussions, and today's discussion is a part of this very vastly ongoing series. And we are thrilled to have you all here today with us. So, with that being said, why is this topic so important to gender based violence? Well, media as a stakeholder to gender based violence is one that is very nuanced and very vast. You have issues such as sensationalism, where media representatives want to create a story, a narrative for their audience and create a better retention, where where in that way it causes disparities for victims, where victims have to face the grunt of this, sort of narrative that they make, whether it's false or not, whether victimizers hide behind it, and all of those topics, which our very distinguished panel will be discussing on later. So I'd like to also state that right now we're live on our YouTube channel, IYAP Official. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our participants on the joining us live, as well as the registered attendees from across the platform. And you, our amazing audience, please feel free to ask questions and send them in the meeting chat. But we do ask that you keep your mics muted during the speaker segments. Adding on, I want to extend a heartfelt welcome to our distinguished guests. Ma'am, we are thrilled to have you with us today. Your diverse expertise and insights will incite growth and independence in volunteering and better acquittedness to vocalizing thoughts, vocalizing volunteering, and bettering the IYAP cause going forward as activists for the fight against gender-based violence for tomorrow. So, a brief agenda of the event. Um, I'd like to tell you that we have an incredible panel for today. Our very distinguished guest will be giving a 15-minute or 20-minute presentation on the topic. And with that, we'll also be following up with questions from the moderator as myself. And we'll also be opening the floor to you, our distinguished guests, or our audience, to ask questions from our speaker. So following that, we'll also be concluding with closing remarks. And following these closing remarks, we'll also be taking a group photo to commemorate this incredible learning session of today. So I'd also like to give a brief introduction of our speaker. Shalini Fernando is a qualified legal practitioner who holds a Bachelor of Law from the University of London and Masters in Law from the University of Colombo. With a deep commitment to advancing legal principles, she has actively contributed to various areas, including children's rights, gender justice, women's rights, sexual and gender-based violence, media law, and rights to information law. Currently, Ms. Shalini serves as the advocacy officer under the National Child Protection and Leads Project, where she plays a central role in promoting legal protection and awareness in child protection and related issues. Her work in this capacity includes coordinating advocacy efforts, conducting training, and advising on legal matters related to children's rights and gender equality. Ma'am, we are delighted to have you with us today. Without further ado, I will now hand over the floor to our honorable speaker, Ms. Shalini. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Rajita. I hope I'm pretty much audible to everyone. So let me start sharing with a small presentation on today's topic. So I hope I'm given the rights to share my screen.
Yes, ma'am. There's access.
Okay, right. So on today's topic is about media and how violence against women is interconnecting and the nexus between these two aspects to be discussed in detail. So if I start with this topic with a note saying that in today's digital world, violence against women has become a pervasive global issue that is constituting of lot of severe human rights violation. I would like to say it's like a global pandemic which we all face like COVID-19. This is also somewhat like that because everyone is trying to address it, but still there is a lot of aspects to be addressed to stop violence against women. So, moreover, why media we are talking about is because the root causes of violence against women is still complex and it's multifaceted, but the media portrayal of women, of stereotyping or objectifying it or normalizing the violence have caused the social culture to accept, in a way, the violence against women, tolerate it, excuse it, or sometimes glamorize it. So let's see how media is shaping the attitudes of the society and how the media can actually do something better to stop violence against women rather than shaping it more towards accepting violence or excusing violence or glamorizing it for commercial benefits or any other aspects in the media sector. So, first, let's start with what is violence against women. This is what the World Health Organization in 2021 has identified. So, just to sometimes we have this simultaneous synonym that we normally use called gender based violence as well. But these are actually words that people have recognized because gender and violence is something which goes in hand. But in day to day life, we don't call violence and gender is something that is having the same meaning. But violence against women or gender based violence is somewhat the same thing that shows to the society that there are violence against women. So the World Health Organization defines violence against women and girls as an any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or mental harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or in private life. So I need to highlight that when we talk about gender, what do you mean by gender? Gender means how society looks at a particular person. But in medical science, we have two categories called female and male. But gender is where society is identifying you as a male person or female. It's like where a girl is wearing as if a boy, we call them like a tomboy. She looks like a tomboy. That's a gender identity. So gender is basically identified by the society. So it's not the medical recognition that female, male is given. So try to understand that as well. So let's go to see the forms of violence against women. So we have verbal violence. We all know traditionally women are told just ignore verbal violence. But if it is regularly attacking you constantly and systematically used, it's amounting to a verbal abuse. And legally also, this abuse is recognized in the Sri Lankan system and even around the world. And of course, the symbolic violence. We all know body shaming, to discriminatory statements, to implications. You're being identified as a particular symbol, right? Or a fruit. I hope you remember there was a time where Facebook status update were going where select the fruit that matches or you like. And then a lot of people had different meaning being targeted to women. She looks like this, that's why she selected this particular fruit. So this is also somewhat of a violence against women. And then, of course, the common violence, the physical violence, the domestic violence, the sexual assault, trafficking. In today's world, the digital world, human trafficking has become a big issue. So, trafficking is also physical violence, then psychological and emotional abuse, which we see in a lot of family context and in relationship context, manipulation, humiliation, gaslighting, even in a professional context as well, where the bosses are manipulating women to do certain aspects of work. And then, of course, sexual violence, rape, harassment, exploitation, and objectification in media. Then, of course, economic violence, control over financial resources, exploitation. We all know there are pay gap between a men and women who works in the same position. So if you take a manager, a female manager might get a lesser pay compared to a male manager. These are also forms of violence uh, against women. Then, of course, let's see what is media playing in this. We all know media is the fourth pillar of the democracy in a country. And the new idea on media, which is delivered to the society, simultaneously is a force with tremendous impact on today's world. So, when media gives a message out, which we saw during the post and pre election, how media worked on benefit of certain parties and not so beneficial for certain other parties. So, because media can actually simulate a trend in the society to accept certain norms. So that is what media does. So because communication has become a fundamental need today, social media is like a basic requirement. Earlier, if you ask from a person what is your basic requirements, it's going to be water, food, or maybe a financial stability, and of course a house to live. But today, a lot of people say my phone is also an important a basic requirement, and so is internet, right? And in internet, what we do with social media, so media includes social media. So communication has become a fundamental need. And then media plays a significant role in shaping the public perceptions, which I just explained to you during the elections recently happened, even during the Easter Sunday, even during the Aragali. A lot of media, lot of social media campaigning helped to reshape the perceptions and attitudes also. And because we are more focused on the violence against women, the media can actually reshape the public perceptions for the good and to stop gender based violence or attitudes about gender roles, relationships, and violence. So let's see how media plays in this. Then, the role of media, if I talk about. So, in a society, media generally play four main and fundamental functions. One is it informs the population. We all see news, we all see social media news pages to get updates, and we get alerts, SMS alerts. All of these are informing the population in general about news. And it serves as a means of socializing the population in terms of attitude, values, and behaviors. This we see through debates that the media organizers. We have seen where TV programs are there, which there are debates about certain topic, and then there are pros and cons about a particular topic. So these are somewhat of a fundamental functions the role of media does. And then, of course, it serves as a entertainment to all culture, right? We celebrate New Year, and there are programs where celebration of New Year is highlighted. Then for Christmas, for all other, for Poya days, so entertainment to all culture. Then it behaves as an advocate of social change, which this is the important role for us who wants to stop as an activist. And I hope you all are also being your own capacity to defend violence against women to stop this. So advocate of a social change is what we are looking from the role of media in line with the violence against women and girls. So, when I speak about media, media is not just about print media, TV, or social media. It's about all media. So each medium has its own message. Now, if we take the print, it's an opportunity for reflection. What you write is in what is there in the newspaper. So people may write articles, right? So that's also a medium of communicating what you feel about a particular topic. Then print and radio share the message of imagination. If you have seen radio, if you have listened to radio, they tell you a story in a way that you start imagining things. Articulateness and serial processing. You have seen where, if you have seen the Sri Lankan radio FMs, they tell a story, right? They have a drama which they're only verbally saying, and you keep on imagining the scene, right? Then the message of television and film are an audio-visual style of communication, and still interpreting the two-dimensional representation of movement and space. We see in television, now we have digital television as well. So we see in an audio-visual style. Then social media is a combination of all mediums. Because why? Print also can happen through social media, then print and radio. It's a combination of everything, right? So with time, I will move on to the next point. Now let's see how projection of women in media is being shown. So women are largely being featured in TV, social media, commercial in two capabilities. One as the most solicited consumers. So I'll tell you, a lot of marketing companies, they feel like if we want to market a particular clothing brand, it's good to target women, right? Because population wise also women are more. Even in Sri Lanka, it's 54, more than 54% women are there in comparison to men. So they think we are solicited consumers. We can be easily convinced, right? And the other aspect is we are an instrument of persuasion. We can be easily persuaded to, to fall under this trend or to fall under the other trend. So this is how the projection of women in media is generally happening. And the other thing that I want to highlight is how media representations and violence against women happen. One thing is stereotypes, right? Now, we all know in media, women are particularly portrayed as if we are more concerned about our appearance or relationship or our domestic duties. But there is more than that for a woman, right? Capabilities, intelligence, personality. But in media, if you see, if you take a whitening cream, it's a woman mostly being used, right? And the market is also being targeted for women. So stereotyping, because the media is showing that women are more concerned about the appearance. Right now, these will inherently, indirectly, and directly affect our decision making. And when our decision making is affected, then we are faced with numerous violence. Why we can't speak up for ourselves? We have low esteem. Why we are more concerned about our appearance? We are more concerned about giving the relationship and sacrificing more than what we are required to sacrifice. These will inherently turn a violence against that particular woman, and then she inherently be a domestic victim, abuse of a victim. And then the other one is normalization of violence. Now, if we really see, if you take the media, women are used, their bodies are used for objectifying a particular product or to market a particular song, movie, or advertisement. Right now, this will show that because they want to attract sexual attractness, this will give the message to the men in the society that women are more like disposal objects rather than an human being which are worth of living and having a dignity, and that they deserve respect. Because we all know how certain aspects of society, the younger boys to 2025 boys, sometimes they refer to a woman as an object. If I say it in singular, you know what I mean, right? More, if you don't know the name, you refer it to as an object. So this is normalization of violence, right? Because why? You are basically showing that a woman is an object. So doing some violence against an object is a very normal thing. What is there to be shocked about? So media is a representation sometimes normalize violence, and also certain video games, right? Certain visual art or songs, entertainment media. Sometimes they market all of these violence, the rape incidents, to show that first the victim resist the sexual activity, and then she gives back thinking, oh no, they're sympathetic towards the culprit. No, this kind of representation actually shapes the society's mindset and the attitude. And then the victim blaming, I have seen many, which I will show an article as well. uh, Lot of time the victim is blamed. Why the reporting or the media representation is more focused on what the woman was wearing, or what the girl was wearing, or what the woman was doing, what time did she get raped, what time was she sexually harassed. So that shows that it's the blame. If she was not out at 9 o'clock in the night, she wouldn't have got raped, she wouldn't have got sexually harassed. So victim blaming. And then sensationalism. That means in media representations, most of the time they give more priority to the facts which are attracting audience, like very disturbing facts. There are, I have seen certain article says that a particular girl was raped 15 times, and now people are thinking 15 times, so people attract to that and they start. If you see YouTube subject line, sometimes that is not what is there in the YouTube program, but the subject line captures you and you go and click it. Right, today, because of the digital world, lot of money is spent on negative marketing rather than on positive marketing, and this has actually shaped the society to accept somewhat violence against women also indirectly. And then justification for violence, like I said, more focused on what this girl wore, why was she alone without the parents, why did she go on a trip, all of these questions, justification, right? And then certain wordings they use. I will show you from a newspaper how these things have replicated to people to normalize, right? So this is the article. So this is a very known newspaper. It says that girl was raped at their own will. Who gets raped at their own will? The wording, see, right? This is a headline and this is on the first page. This is last year, right? Girls raped at their own will. Okay. So these things are not good, because why society will accept? Because we are living in a society where whatever we see, we think that is true. That is why social media and digital world has been a major platform to integrate or to establish a particular mindset on people. There have been researchers where if you see a TikTok video for 3 to 6 minutes, you keep on browsing the TikTok homepage for more than 45 minutes. There are scientific research on these things. So it has potentially a larger aspect or power to influence. But so media has to be very responsible in addressing issues against. But there are articles, I have seen many articles as well where, be honest, with regard to this article, lot of people, lot of civil societies, lot of NGOs spoke about this, and they wrote to the Daily Mirror editor and told them to take it down or to say and apologize for what they have written, because this is completely wrong, right? Because this entire message, because Daily Mirror is, because we know a lot of people look at the Daily Mirror paper on online platform also, they have articles and they have a good crowd. So a lot of people also counter attacked this message also, the representation. So that's a good way of thinking in the digital world. So the next aspect I want to see is when media portrays negatively a woman, right? What will happen? Of course, stereotyping, right? So people will start identifying, okay, a woman is more focused on their appearance, they're more focused on the relationships, they're more focused on the domestic duties, not about their personality, intelligence, capability, nothing, right? So this will be a harmful stereotype. And then, of course, objectifying your body, right? Because everyone, right, will start looking at a woman as an object rather than looking at as if she's a woman. She's a woman with dignity. She's a woman of self-respect. Because that's what, because we are more engaged with media rather than our day-to-day life relationships. We are more in the phones rather than talking. If you, I've seen with my friends, even with the Gen Z also, if you go to a restaurant, most of them are in their phones until the food is on the table, right? So the media is pretty much part and parcel of our life. So if there is negative media portrayals, these things will normalize. And acceptance of violence against women. Once the woman is objectified, then doing some violence against a woman is not a big deal. People will be like, Ayo, you should tolerate this. Now, we have seen where the generation above us who would say that if your partner raises hand on you, you tolerate. You be patient. Don't raise your voice. Do not counterattack or do not talk about it. Do not complain to anyone. Right? These things are normalized. Why? Because they feel like the woman is more focused on the securing the domestic relationship rather than having more than a career or empowerment or development. Right? So these things will affect. And then, of course, justification of male aggression, right? Now, all it normalizes for men to think, okay, whatever we do, they're just fine. Why do we have to give them importance, right? And then the male aggression, and this aggression can be in various ways: verbally, physically, emotionally, mentally, right? And then, of course, victim blaming, which I said. So, certain wordings that media uses actually convinces or consequences of these type of things will reshape the attitude of the society, and that will inherently normalize violence against women and girls. So this is what I wanted to highlight on my presentation with the given time. I hope it was informative for you. And if there is any questions before we go for the moderators' questions, the floor is all to ask me any questions if there is.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, ma'am will be taking the questions right after we end the live as well. So just give us a moment so we can process the first few questions. So, ma'am, wonderful presentation. I really found it a very powerful message that today's society or today's media finds themselves normalizing what is a very damaging process of gender-based violence where you take women where in their own institutions such as family, social institutions, family that they can turn to is very difficult to turn to because media some media narratives make it difficult for them to come out to speak to make their case and really fight against the perpetrators that cause gender-based violence and really attack women in that area. um, I find that it was really interesting that you mentioned that each media has its own message. It really does. All media has its message. It really does pull up a rhetoric. It really does pull up a narrative, an overall narrative onto cases. Especially with that newspaper clipping you brought out, how media can twist what we perceive. Um, Especially with regards to stereotypes and how male aggression, especially like aggressors and victimizers, are consistently normalized through this platform. And it is really a damaging area. But it's also incredibly intuitive, ma'am, how you mentioned media is the fourth pillar of democracy, somewhat of a play of the separation of powers as the fourth institution. And I really do think that it is the fourth institution. It is media really does bring out the fourth pillar of democracy. It really does highlight all of the narratives that really bring out a government, really bring out policy, really bring out what the people think. It is a collective consciousness. So in that way, what you said on media really looking for advocacy or really needing to look for advocacy in women's rights is what needs to be the common narrative in media itself, especially in making mistakes. it how how media uses its literacy, especially with regards to articles, titles, headlines. Sensationalism is especially damaging for the those that face the brunt of gender-based violence. Women really do face issues when trying to come out, as I mentioned earlier. And I really think that is a powerful message, ma'am. And I really commend you for bringing that out in today's session. So before we move on, ma'am, I'd also like to ask you a few questions about our format. So when it comes to ethics in media, it's difficult for media outlets such as news or even at times social media to maintain fair. As I mentioned, they direct themselves consistently to sensationalism, especially social media, where young children, especially young impressionable males, may see these rhetorics. So, would you like what storytelling in a way doesn't storytelling in a way does affect these victims? What advice would you like to give for victims of GBV or gender-based violence in avoiding this sensationalism in somewhat of a way?
So, this is a classic situation of balancing private, or we call it privacy rights, versus the public interest. Now, as a media organization, they have to balance these two interests, right? Now, privacy or the private interest is with the victim, whereas the public interest, responsibility, informing the public that these kind of heinous crimes or heinous violences is happening against women and girls is somewhat a responsibility, a social responsibility that lies with the media sector. But they have to balance it, right? So they always have a challenge, because in a media also it's humans, it's normal people who are working in these all types of media, right? Even though we term it as a media, it's the people, humans who are working, so their subjective judgment could sometimes be fair to one person and might not be fair to another person. That's why a media platform or an organization or any media person, a lone individual or an organization, should objectively see what is the better outcome of a particular media representation would be, or media reporting should be. So they should give first priority with regard to violence against women and girls. Depending on the seriousness of the offense, they have to first deal with this with sensitivity and with understanding, right? What I've seen with a lot of media representation is they don't know the entire story. They hear few, two, three lines from somewhere. I'm talking because I'm a by profession a lawyer. So I see the judicial reporting that media organizations do. They hear few lines from the court and they write a story on their own imagination, which should not be the case, right? You should be informed about the entire incident and then filter it. That's the most important part. And then, in especially when it comes to cases of violence against women, the advice that I give to victims in other way is, of course, the social media and also other mediums will approach you. If it's a high profile where there is a lot of attention from the public with regard to a particular violence case, the media organization will or journalist will approach you, whoever is writing that story, whoever is trying to capture that story. You need to know, right, that just because you're a victim, because you're feeling vulnerable, do not tell or be open so much to a media organization, because certain words that you say can be taken out of context and put on a media representation or a reporting. So, first of all, what I say is, I'm not saying victims should not speak, right? But how the general coverage has always been, it's actually not really highlighting the culprit's behavior. It's more of what the victim said. What did the victim do? It's more of the details of the victim. The name to identification to the address, everything is said. Why? Because we are revealing, right? If we tell this person, listen, I'm okay to talk about my incident, but you cannot, right? This is called somewhat of an informed consent. I know this might sound little bit of technical, but we really should know, because likewise, when we go to a doctor, we should know what to tell the doctor. Same way, if you're talking to a media organization or if you're writing in social media about your story, please know, even though we are writing it, typing it from a keyboard, a lot of people will see it. And not today now. Just imagine I'm posting a status or a story today. Some people will screenshot this and reshare it. And you might not know how this become viral also, right? So we also have to be aware. I know I have whenever I say these things, sometimes the victims come up and say at that point we are not thinking at all, but we have to think, right? So that's one thing. You need to, there are a lot of CSOs, there are a lot of NGOs who are working with victims. And if a media organization is reaching out to you, first think twice before you say. Specifically, do not reveal your identification details, your private details about where you going to school, where did you go, at what time you went, because these are not important when they're reporting that much. Because what they have to say in a media representation is this is wrong. But what I have seen is, likewise, I told in the previous media article, that girl at, if you, I can say about that incident, at one point that girl was okay to engage in a physical activity or a sexual activity. And later, when she realizes that this is wrong, she withdrew. That's why in the headline it goes as girl was raped at her own will. Because why at the beginning she was okay? This was told to the media portal. That is why it went wrong. But still, the media has responsibility, because this could be a younger child who don't know what they're saying, and because of the vulnerability. So these things has to be very much careful, right? And they have to be extremely cautious when sharing their stories. If you ask my advice as a person who's practically experienced it, some people, we as women, we have a thing, we get carried away, right? When we start talking, because why we like to talk a little bit more than the other aspect of human beings, because we try to share our feelings, we try to get validation, right? So be careful when y'all are engaging with these kind of media, people coming to you and asking about your story. It could be any type of violence, could be a normal verbal abuse also. You have to be extremely careful. And so is the media organization. They have to prioritize the safety, the dignity, and the privacy of the victim, rather than glamorizing the entire experience. If you remember, during Saya's incident, unwanted people were highlighted, where the real culprit was not actually how what was Saya wearing. That was not actually relevant or important. What we wanted was that we need to stop. It was a very young child and who was sleeping with the grandmother in the night, and someone opens the window and just kidnaps and go. But it was so hyped up by the media. The entire focus went on to something that Greece Yaka and everyone was talking about that, right? So these things we have to really be careful. I hope I answered your question pretty much, Rajta.
Yes, ma'am. That was a wonderful answer. And it is true, awareness is really critical in most of these cases. It's important that those that are interacting with the media really do know what to say and what not to reveal. Because a lot of people that go into these cases, they have a lot of pressure behind them, a lot of trauma. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do when a big reporter comes behind them and asks all of these questions. So in that way, mainstream media um, is really difficult to navigate for these victims. On the topic, ma'am, of mainstream media, I just wanted to ask individually, what effect do social media and mainstream media individually have on the environment of victims of GBV, especially um, when they come about, expressing their experiences, expressing what their cases were about, and what policies should those who manage these institutions? I know that you answered a lot for mainstream media, but here, if you could focus more on social media, what these institutions, such as Instagram and all these other social media organizations, should do to minimize the disparities in these environments. for gender-based violence victims?
Uh, to start with, we need to understand that both social media and mainstream media have profound effects on the environment surrounding the victims of gender-based violence or violence against women and girls, because it has both positive and negative impacts. But I'll start with social media. Actually, social media can be a tool for empowering the survivors, but we have to be extremely careful, right? Because these social media, it's a digital space, and sometimes we don't know, right? If we are not aware about how digital world works, right? How hacking to phishing to everything is working, a lot of things that we say in social media can turn up against us at a later point. So yes, it's an empowering tool for survivors, right? And then, of course, the platform offers to share the stories, right? But remember, I hope every one of you have social media accounts. Uh, if you go to a Facebook after today's session, if you can't remember, just go through and see. When we start to have a Facebook account, the first thing they say is, "Do you take responsibility?" It's like self-service, right? They don't take responsibility for what's happening to you, right? It's a platform which says that these are the conditions, these are the terms and conditions. Do you accept it? Right? So it's like parking at your own risk. Social media platforms are such, right? We can report it like what we do, right? Fake accounts, we are reporting if someone is sharing videos or materials or status which are against degrading of a woman or a religion or a community. Of course, we can report it to the Facebook or to any media organization and they take down, right? But it's a more of a self regulation of all the people who are using the social media, because we can't take the Facebook owner, neither the Meta company, to the court. But some countries have tried to take these social media companies for data privacy issues where they're sharing the data, right? I don't want to talk about more on the digital security, but coming back to the violence part, yes, by sharing the stories, we gain support. Why? People who have experienced the same type of violence will come together and raise a voice, and that is going to be massive, right? And then there will be unity among others also, and people will feel I'm safe. I'm not the only one who has suffered this, right? Then movements like specifically the Me Too movement, right? It was rapidly shared and accepted by a lot of social media and around the world as well, and it did to some certain impact, even though it was more towards the entertainment sector. It did highlight, right? It did. And it played a significant role in breaking the silence around gender-based violence and giving victims a voice. And these victims that who came were, some of them were celebrities where we were looking up to them. And when they came up, even the small scale victims who didn't have the power to raise a voice, they started to raise. And that is what the social advocacy is. So social media can actually be used in that way, and of course it will help to disseminate about a topic in few seconds, right? Social media and the attitudes, the shift in the societal attitudes, and mobilize support for change. During Aragalia, right, we saw, right, people were sending social media status or message, come here, there is violence here, there's violence here, come together, we need support. It is, and it can happen to any person nowadays. More than going for legal solutions, people take out their phones and they start recording, right? Because that has empowered specifically women. If there's something happening against them, they're not scared to record it and put it on social media. There is social media live aspects, features that can be used, yes. But from the social media platform owners, their responsibility has to be upgraded for sure. It's going to be tough. Why? Because if you take Facebook and Instagram and any other, features are different, right? The now Asian market, they have different features in Facebook and specifically in Instagram. Whereas if you go to Europe market, they have different features like this reels and everything, right? So it's very hard. Then in certain media platforms, if you take YouTube, they have a separate community guideline. If you take Facebook, they have another community guideline. If you take TikTok, they have a very broad community guideline. It's different. So we have to have a uniformity in it, like the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, because now the next few years is going to be a digital world and AI is going to take over for sure. Lot of aspects in our day-to-day life. So they have to. There is a common need where the social platform owners should sit together and decide. And if they are not deciding, I think the powerful countries have started to talk, like China. They use their own social media accounts. They're not using the general social media accounts. So they have started. But there has to be a common solution where we have long way to go ahead. But there are few community guidelines which are helping. But those are just precautionary methods, right? But when we face violence only, we try to see a solution. But before the facing the violence, we should know how to be safeguard against the violence. That is something that I really need to highlight, because the victims that I have worked, I really don't want to say the victims, I like to put it as survivors. And they actually reacted after they faced the violence. I want to give the message out that, listen, you need to take precautions, right? No one is safe, whether you're a woman or a younger child or elder person. Everyone is not safe in this digital world. No, whatever you do, there is a digital footprint of you. If you take Google Maps, they track your where you go and what time just go and see your Google Map history. It will show how many minutes you stayed in one place, right? So it's not safe to anyone. So that's what I said. This digital world has taken over, and this violence against women is reshaping to something else also, right? And mainstream media, of course, because I did discuss a lot during my presentation, it plays a huge role in shaping the public perceptions. Why? Because our perception should change from the family, right? The first unit is the family, and then the school, then the society. So a lot of parents, the elder generation, still look at TV, still look at newspapers. So they also have a big role to play apart from the social media. So that's what I want to highlight for this question.
All right, thank you so much, ma'am. And it truly is really important to note the uncertainty of going into social media, especially these victims that go on the platform, how they're perceived, how everything occurs from there. And yes, there really needs to be a unified background for social media on how we're really going to combat the internal conflicts that occur, whether be it gender-based violence, be it bullying, be it a lot of disparity that happens internally, because end of the day, these really are people, and people do a lot of bad things, and there are a lot of bad people online that have easy access to young children, very vulnerable women, that and even those that have faced gender-based violence. Especially, I know that a lot of these individuals, even going online, they face a lot of backlash because of their stories and how other people perceive it, and they want to vocalize what they think, be it wrong, be it a shift of narrative, be it uninformed even. They want to voice it, and the social media platform is an area where they can do it without any issues or any backlash. But I also see your point where it can really be a net good. A lot of movements have been facilitator of social media. I heard you mention the article here. Even the similar thing happened with the very same thing happened in Pakistan, sorry, Bangladesh as well, during the protests. And the Me Too movement, especially very pertinent to gender-based violence. Um, but I'd just like to end off with one final question, and I see that a few people are eager to ask questions in the meeting room. I'll get to that as soon as we finish this last question. Right. Ma'am, understanding that as an attorney of law yourself, I heard you mention it earlier, your pro bono practice as well is in child and women's rights. Are legal systems failing victims of gender-based violence in the menace of the nuance of digital policies? And have you come across any cases where status quo policies did an injustice to victims of gender-based violence?
Let me start with the answering this question. The law is actually drafted and passed by the parliament, and it's not tested anywhere, right? So if you take a law against the domestic violence or law against, if you take the Online Safety Act, anything, those are theoretical aspects that the what the parliament does. So implementing it or practically applying is what the lawyers, judges, all the judicial sector, including activists like all of you, the young ones and organizations, everyone, the CSOs, NGOs, they all do is practically implementing the law. There are obviously going to be difficulties because what theory is sometimes practically it won't work. So yes, there have been issues where the status quo uh, of a particular case did not give justice because of the policies or the laws available. Specifically, if you talk about these abusers which are happening in the cyberspace, right? The cyber stalking to revenge porn or harassment through social media, because it's really hard to prove it sometimes. Because I told you, still we are getting used to it. Because our court structure also during COVID only we open to online court system, right? We have a very traditional court system. So proving a case where digital platforms were used to perpetuate abuse, there were a bit of a, I'm not saying there was injustice, but there was little bit lot of challenge than a normal platform of abuse where you have to convince. And there are good laws. We have Electronic Computer Crimes Act, we have Electronic Transmission Act, we have a lot of laws, but those are not practically tried. If you have not practically tried, people are tend to take a back step before accepting. So I would like to word it in a say there was a lot of challenges in providing evidence and establishing a case and proving a point, right? Because the digital space provides to a person to have a fake identity. And then I have, if I've taken a case, I have to track down the IP to figure out the culprit. Because in a case, in a court case, you have to have a victim and you have to have a culprit. So if a culprit is a fake identity, I have to figure out whose his fake account was. So for that, you have to have lot of technology used. Like you have to track down the IP and you have to go to CERT or any other organization to figure this out. And sometimes this is time consuming. These are the challenges. I won't say that this is injustice, but I feel like this will normalize because now people are coming up thanks to the Online Safety Act, Domestic Violence Act. People are coming forward, and this will gradually come to a very good position when things are being implemented and judgments are coming out. Yes, of course. Now, we saw recently the Australian government, they said, I might be wrong. I think it's less than 16 or less than 15 children are not allowed to use social media at all, right? So, and Australia is a very developed country, and if they're going to for a law that will not allow any child under the age of, I'm not so sure whether it's 15 or 16, we'll take it as 15, less than 15 years can't use social media at all, and there are repercussions, and parents will also be responsible if the any investigating officer get caught with a child using a social media account. So there are issues because accepting digital world is now only starting, right? Because this court system that we have followed is coming from Roman Dutch law and it's very traditional. Now it's changing. I'm not saying there is injustice, but I would say that there is a lot of challenges, obviously, to establish a case or bring justice to a victim of a gender-based violence.
Thank you, ma'am, for that valuable insight. It's very true. The legal system is very rooted in the past, but it's also changing a lot. And these and most of these legalities passed by Parliament aren't very much tested or put through the strainer to figure out what works and doesn't work. And it's very difficult to do that as well because it's not like the policy can directly be tested, or it might even be able to. But as for that, I think that was a very valuable insight, ma'am, and I really thank you for answering that question. Now, I'll be handing over the floor to the audience to ask questions. but